It is with my great pleasure to introduce Dr. Elena Sparrow. I have known Elena Sparrow since I was a baby, and the two keynote speakers, I did not choose the keynote speakers, but one's office is to the left of my office here in Fairbanks, and the other one's office is to my right. So I feel very honored to introduce both Elena and Donna tomorrow. Elena Sparrow is a research professor and education outreach director at the University of Alaska Fairbanks. She's an expert in teaching and learning, education, professional development, and soil microbiology. She's also the founder of Globe Alaska. Globe is the Global Learning and Observations to Benefit the Environment. It was started in 1994 by Al Gore and a bunch of folks who thought it would be a great idea to have youth monitoring the environment in their own backyards. And Elena was one of the early adopters of this program, and she started Globe Alaska in 1996 and has been going strong and building a team of Globies in the state of Alaska. Elena also is the lead of a project called the Arctic and Earth Science Project, which is funded through NASA Science Activation. And it is a project, she'll talk way more about this, I'm sure, a project that really works to braid Indigenous knowledge and Western science, Indigenous science, I should say, also to produce community-centered data sets that can be used for climate action and that elevate youth in the whole process. Elena is also the reason why I became a scientist when I was in kindergarten. She and it's not just me. Elena's like one of the people that's like a kin keeper. She believes that relationships are the number one most important thing in this work. And I invite her to my class every semester. Oh, Janet, you shouldn't have had me introduce her. I invite her to my class every semester, and Elena adopts family members. She's got the biggest family of anyone I know around the Arctic, and people call her auntie all over campus here and beyond. And so Elena is somebody who gathers family and creates family and inspires people to fight for justice and equity in research, and inspires them to think science is a place where they belong. So without further ado, Elena Sparrow.
Thank you so much for that introduction, Katie. I appreciate you, and I appreciate this opportunity to share my personal journey to community and citizen science in the far north. And I thank Arcus and the organizers for inviting me. And thank you all for dedicating your precious time to this conference and sharing your time with me now. So good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. I am Elena Bautista Sparrow. I am a wife, mother of two, a sister, and an ate, which means older sister, or tita or auntie to many. And I work at the International Arctic Research Center at the University of Alaska Fairbanks, Troth Yeda campus. It's unceded land, well cared for by the Lower Tanana Dene people for centuries. IARC work is in the Arctic, where everywhere is native land, and I appreciate Sophie's land acknowledgement. We recognize, appreciate, and honor Indigenous peoples who are the original and successful stewards of the lands and waters. We strive for respectful and reciprocal relationships with all the peoples of the Arctic in our work, and to contribute to collective growth, healing, equity, and justice. My journey started in the tropics. And so this was me as a little girl, and that's my mom. I was born and raised in the Philippines by a single mother who was widowed twice, but lost an infant child and raised the rest of us 5 children on her own. I'm the youngest. Our mother instilled in us, besides her deep faith, the value of education. She said, I do not have land or money to give you for your inheritance or education. I can only give you education. With education, you can do anything you want. So she set aside 10 centavos for every peso that she earned towards our education. And all of us children obtained a bachelor's degree in science, 3 of us a master's degree, and I got my doctorate degree. My mother was my first mentor. She was intelligent, sharp, and caring. I learned a lot about mentoring from her, not just the intellectual side, but caring for the whole person, helping others, not just in school or in their careers, but in their lives, if they want to be, if they if that's part of their priorities. I always wanted to go into a career where I could be of service to others. My first thought was medicine, but we could not afford the cost of medical school. Then I thought about agriculture, which helps feed people. My undergraduate thesis advisor and mentor, Dr. Conchita Valera, guided me toward a major in soil science and soil microbiology in a Bachelor of Science degree at the University of the Philippines College of Agriculture. Right after graduation, I was recruited to work at the International Rice Research Institute. I was inspired by my former mentor, Dr. Valera, to pursue a Master of Science degree at Cornell University, where she obtained her PhD. And I returned to the International Rice Research Institute and worked as an assistant soil microbiologist. And then I decided to go to Colorado State University for a PhD. And there, I obtained 2 degrees, PhD and an MRS. So that's where I met my husband and Steve. And we continued to work together on this second degree. It's been a very interesting and blessed journey of more than a half a century. A wedding gift of round-trip airfare tickets to come to Fairbanks, Alaska for our honeymoon in July 1972 was instrumental in bringing us to the subarctic. It was a beautiful and perfect summer, very comfortable temperatures. Everything was green. The flowers were bright and brilliant and in bloom. We got hooked on Alaska and the Arctic. We decided to live in Alaska and arrived in early 1974. And temperatures dipped down to 60 below zero. One Sunday morning, the car felt like it had flat tires as we drove, and we could not find the church through the ice fog. I wondered whether we made the right choice to move to the Arctic. But in time, we learned to enjoy and love winter too. People, when we told them that we were coming to Alaska to live, they were telling me that I'd freeze to death because I was always cold in Colorado. And also they told us to start a book club because so that we would have something to do. But we found that we didn't have any time sometimes for book reading because there was so much to do. And so daylight hours started to increase more in spring, and then summer, and everything was beautiful again. And we thought we can do this. We can live in Alaska. Our Arctic stint was interrupted when Steve decided to get his PhD at the University of Minnesota. We returned to Alaska with our firstborn son and Lola. That's the name for grandma. And then we had another child, Emelisa. Steve went into a tenure track position at the University of Alaska Fairbanks, while I worked for the USDA, U.S. Department of Agriculture, Agricultural Research Service and started mentoring educators in their classroom and in my research laboratory. I was very much interested in sharing not just scientific results, but the process of how science is done. I now know that community and citizen science does this. In the early and mid 1990s, I learned about the GLOBE program, which stands for Global Learning and Observations to Benefit the Environment. I learned about it when I was on the Alaska State team, tasked with figuring out how to communicate and educate people about climate change, a term that was still considered bad at the time. Our team, made up of 3 educators and me as a scientist, decided our approach would be through working with K-12 students. We figured if they understand climate change, they could take that understanding home to their parents, who might pay attention to it. We got $10,000 in seed money from the National Science Foundation to look at many program options. And GLOBE stood out. It impressed us because it is an international science and education program and currently active in 124 countries. It focuses on increasing the ability of students to collect data, make decisions, conduct investigations, and contribute what they learn to ongoing investigations. Isn't this what citizen and community science is about? GLOBE is a good way, a quintessential way of actively learning about science by doing science, learning about the environment, increasing awareness and stewardship of the land and waters in the schools and communities. It's not just for an elite few students, but a whole classroom of students or anybody in and outside of school. This was highly motivating for me. And I still am very excited about it and get energized when students get really excited about science and learning about their environment and many other things that some of them, I may not notice, and they do. After our GLOBE training for trainers in Arizona in 1996, I established the GLOBE Alaska Partnership through the University of Alaska Fairbanks with a promise to support teachers that we GLOBE trained. I was faced with the challenge of implementing a program with no money. I got small grants here and there to buy supplies and GLOBE equipment and bring in somebody who could help me run GLOBE workshops. I thought we hit big time when I got a $24,000 grant from the Environmental Protection Agency. My first attempt to write and get a successful proposal, which connected us in Fairbanks through video conferencing to Anchorage, Juneau, and Barrow, and working with master educators and climate change scientists. The first defining event in my citizen science and community science work was a $350,000 grant to the university to develop plant phenology measurement process protocols to study the beginning and the end of the plant growing season. The change in the timing of these biological events are indicators of climate change. This marked a turning point for both my research and the integration of these methods in the GLOBE program that began to be used among the citizen science tools and in more than 20 countries. I teamed up with a remote sensing scientist, Dr. Dave Verbilla, and an educator, Dr. Leslie Gordon, in this work. Another pivotal grant was almost $1 million, also funded by the National Science Foundation. It was for our project, Global Change Education Using Western Science and Indigenous Observations. But that was after a couple of proposal rejections because the terms indigenous science and indigenous ways of knowing were deemed not acceptable by the reviewers. But after we got the grant, we used the terms indigenous science and indigenous ways of knowing freely and continue to use it. We realized the importance of using indigenous science and mainstream science with the GLOBE protocol measurements to make learning relevant to indigenous youth in the far north. I found that Alaska Native community members embrace the GLOBE perspective. The elders that I've worked with thought that GLOBE was a good way of turning the attention of the young people in villages back to the environment, that they want their youth to learn what the elders know, how they do science and observe, but also want them to learn the Western way to live in a blended world where we all need to get along. So we had Alaskan elders come to our summer institutes for educators, along with scientists sharing their knowledge and expertise. In our early work, we have been blessed, honored, and privileged to have worked with outstanding and famous Alaskan knowledge holders and experts like Caleb Pungawi and Jonas Ramos, who have both passed on. We're eternally grateful to them for sharing their expertise and the experiences, life experiences with us. We will always cherish them, their memories. I'm very grateful to Sydney Stevens, who was co-lead on this project. And we called it for short, Observing Locally, Connecting Globally, who introduced me to Alaskan elders and got me thinking more about how we could blend and braid knowledge systems. We continue to be connected to and grounded by indigenous Alaskan elders like Sam Dementif, Kenneth Frank, Mary Dayton, Doreen Simmons, and many others who have shared their gifts of knowledge, stories, and time with us, and the educators and students we work with. Crucial to our work now in this Arctic and STEM integrating GLOBE and NASA is our partnership with the Association of Interior Native Educators, whose director is Melinda Chase and is a co-investigator on this project, this NASA Science Activation Project. The Arctic and Earth STEM integration of GLOBE and NASA assets in engaging youth to explore the impacts and feedbacks of a warming Arctic and to apply their learning to action and stewardship projects. Dr. Katie Spellman is also a key co-investigator and co-lead on our team. The braiding or weaving of indigenous and Western scientific approaches now informs my entire approach to research, teaching, and community engagement in science. At the 2018 Globe Learning Expedition event in Ireland, I brought a group of students and teachers and their elder from the Hetasik Apaluk Memorial School in the Yupik community of Whitlock to share their story of using GLOBE technology and techniques in their study of the Arctic environment. Their study focused on erosion of the river banks in their community. To them, loss of land is loss of heritage. Besides presenting their project in an oral session with a PowerPoint presentation, these students also presented in the Yupik way as a story about their project with a song they wrote and danced to. This fulfilled the students' wish to share not only their GLOBE project, but also to share who they are as UP people. What they did resonated with and was much appreciated by the other Globe youth and adults from all over the world at that conference. Our project, our NASA Science Activation Project, developed this learning framework that uses Indigenous knowledge, Globe, and NASA assets to make STEM learning actionable and relevant. So the learning starts from Indigenous elders and long-term residents and scientists about the science and impacts of climate change. And we continue to tweak this. It's a continuously changing, evolving framework to make it better to help students. And one of the things that we have done is our workshops to include not only educators, but also community members, so that there are more, so people come in teams and they are supporting the learning of youth using citizen and community science. Our Arctic and Earth Science team has found that we can influence the development of additional resources to meet local needs. A lot of the Globe protocols are usable here in the Arctic, but we also have some specific issues. So we developed the Frost Tube protocol led by Dr. Kenji Yoshikawa for observing the timing and depth of soil freezing in places where soils seasonally freeze and or underlain by permafrost. It's an important indicator of what's happening to the permafrost when temperatures rise. This Frost Tube protocol is now included as a Globe protocol in a Globe Teacher's Guide, and Frost Tube data has been entered into the Globe Data Archive. One of the related NSF projects called Fresh Eyes on Ice that I am a part of developed a method for communities and youth to observe freeze up and breakup of rivers, ponds, and lakes using the Globe Observer app to take and upload pictures, measure snow depth and ice thickness to provide much needed data to help predict the timing and intensity of river ice breakup and the potential for flooding, and also to provide information for safe travels and activities on ice-covered areas and regions. Katie Spellman is co-lead on this Fresh Eyes on Ice project and also the PI of an NSF, of a NASA grant continuing the work from this NSF funded part that has ended. It has been a blessing and a privilege to work with Katie Spellman, who is a leader in community and citizen science. I think the development of environment-specific Globe protocols is another step in seeking consensus on climate change and ways to combat it, which has become politically sensitive. We can use community and citizen science as common ground for education, for STEM and climate learning, and as a tool for climate adaptation. Working with elders and youth in intergenerational learning has been very inspiring for me and culturally enriching. I have learned from elders, educators, and community members and youth. Using multiple knowledge systems in community and citizen science is very important in providing an inclusive and equitable learning environment, as well as for developing and sustaining respectful, reciprocal, and trusting relationships. Again, thank you for listening. I appreciate all of you.
I love you, Elena. And you don't see in a regular science conference, you don't hear the words "I love you" very often, but that's what separates this type of work
Yeah.
from normal science, is like its relationships. So thanks for being a role model, Elena.